how do we influence the SLT? We've agreed on I&D we're agreed on I&D at a manager's level. So how do we influence?
So it's interesting, isn't it? It seems that there's this big, it can feel sometimes like there's this big immovable wall. And I think, you know, in certain industries we call it a glass ceiling, but there's this thing that is hard to break through. And I think in any of this space, it's the tone needs to be set from the top. The managers, the middle layer, are the ones that make it happen. But actually, it's the layer at the opening part of a business that fires it up and makes it happen, because they are the ones that it influences the most. And it's creating excitement at all three levels. So I realized that an SLT buy-in is important. And I think it's important to personalize it to start with. So within that SLT, there will be individuals. And if you think about the question that I shared with you earlier about when they haven't felt included, and there will be stories where that is true, we've all got them. It's accessing those stories. So I don't know how close you are to that. I'm wondering, are you, whoever the person is, are you willing to jump on the mic just to talk to me so I can get a little bit more texture? Just so I can understand a little bit more about the work that's been done so far and the messaging that's being sent out. And then I can work with a little bit more fact.
Well, whilst we wait to hear whether that person wants to elaborate a bit further, we do have somebody who has put in the chat box, so they're happy to share their story around how they got an exec sponsorship and engagement at Britvic and the journey they've been on so far. So what I'm going to do, let's find that person. And so Karen, I'm going to allow you to talk to Sam now.
Hi Karen, if you could just unmute yourself, that would be great.
Hi Sam and Robin, nice to speak to you. Really good conversation. I just want to talk a little bit about my experience and how my organisation is very open and supportive of this conversation. I have been very much engaged in leading and developing a network group around disability. So we've had people come who have had really open and honest conversations around that they are dyslexic, or where they have neurodiversity issues that cause them at work. And I think the big learning we've had is we've had engagement from the top through getting an exec sponsor who has kept that conversation going and leading. We've opened up discussion, lunch and learns, afternoons, where people have come forward and shared their story. It's been a very brave conversation that they've faced into, but once one person starts to talk, it's a little bit like a snowball effect, and that is really what I just wanted to share with everyone today.
Thank you, Karen. That's really generous of you. How would you say, because you're right, when there's that snowball effect, it's just incredible, isn't it, when people start to share? How would you say that you created that psychologically safe space where people felt they could just be truly honest and you know, speak their truth?
I think I started the conversation by personally standing up in a commercial conference and told my story, but don't think it was easy. It took me over 2 years to really get the narrative right as to how much I wanted to share. But the minute I did that, people started then later came to me either face to face or dropped me emails. And I think that just having that brave badge on to start with really made people start to feel a little braver as well. And fundamentally, it is really, I mean, I have the most amazing meetings with a steerco team of 6 people who all have different challenges in their day-to-day work life. but the energy we get and the motivation, support and focus we can then take forward in this conversation is really key.
Wonderful, Karen. And I think I just want to pull out something you said. What first is really well done for being that first voice. And I think we can sometimes get lost in the fact that it needs to be a whole army that brings in change and starts change. And actually, it starts with one person. Some of the biggest revolutions we have in if you think about Gandhi, if you think about Greta Thunberg, if you think about all of those people, it starts with one person just being brave and speaking to start to bring in change. So, really well done you. And I think for sharing with 107 people on here, what you've been doing at Brickfit. And I think if I can take two things away from that, it is don't wait for a strategy, just start the talking. Because as you say, it took 2 years. And it is a daunting experience to be the first one to go. But once that drum starts beating, it is incredible how other people will start to pick up a baton and start beating it too.
Totally agree.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, Karen. Really great to hear your story. We do have more questions coming through, but before we get to them, our previous question on strategy, Lynn, is available. So just going to unmute. So Lynn, you are now live with Sam.
Hi, Lynn. How are you?
I'm well, very well. I work for an excellent company, actually. There are a lot of, it's an Italian company, so there's a lot of European people represented throughout the business, but it's just on the SLT, really. If it has a lot of men in there, and the two women, there are two women in the SLT. However, everyone's white and English speaking, except for the MD, who happens to be Italian. How do we get the SLT really to buy into the need for more diversity and acceptance of all, people from all backgrounds?
So, I think I was going, first of all, I want to pick up on something that Karen said. I'm wondering if you can have somebody who this speaks to on that SLT becomes your sponsor. So you've got a table. But there's another thing here about sharing with them the voices of the people that make their business what it is, and that is your grassroots up to management. And I'm wondering whether you can get some not necessarily data, just some language about how they feel within that organization and their backstories, so that you can share with the SLT who it is is creating their culture. Because the culture isn't the SLT, they set the tone of it, but it's everybody else that's within there. They are the masses that allow them to have those seats at the table at the top. And change, when we're talking about, you saw the figures that I shared earlier from that survey. Your business isn't the only one that's heavily laden between skin color and gender. But change will come, because all of these people that I'm talking about now are going to be the leaders of the future. And it's ensuring that the SLT is fully aware about who those people are. So I would recommend one, if you look at the unconscious bias webinar, I'm sure that I put some questions to ask out into an organization in there, but it is asking them how they feel to work there. And, what does the business need to do for them in order for them to commit in the future? And it's giving that SLT some real good understanding of what's going on. Listening groups are great as well. I don't know if you do listening and talking groups, if you do any where the SLT can come and sit in for an hour over lunch and learns, where they just join a conversation and hear people talking about their own stories about when, very simple questions like I shared earlier about inclusion and their backstories, so that the SLT feel closer to the people that they are responsible for looking after.
Yeah, I was part of a group of representative people when I was at Hovis, and we certainly had the idea of inviting somebody, one of the directors, a different director, every month to come and join. So yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you.
And I know as well, because I've been very honoured to be part of the group on this, but IGD, we're just closing tomorrow a reverse mentoring pilot that focuses on inclusion. And I haven't seen all the data yet, but I know it's been overwhelmingly positive. So there are some real worthwhile ways of creating those really great conversations, and I know that the data will be coming out, you know, in the process and everything else will be coming out from that over the next few weeks. But that has been really helpful in allowing those that are in more senior positions really to hear, you know, from others from different backgrounds on their experience of working in this wonderful industry.
I have got another question. I don't know if you've got time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in the 10 years I've been in FMCG, I've noticed a lack of Black people on the commercial teams, and that's pretty much true of all the companies I've worked for the last 10 years. And that includes Red Bull, Hovis, Lavazza. I'm just seeing a lack of Black people.
Yeah. So my thought on this is when I talked earlier about ambition is how do you go about attracting those people to your organization? Because some people feel that they're on a natural path, and I'm not talking necessarily just about Black people, feel they're on a natural path to do a natural thing because one, it's what their families have done before them, or they just don't feel included. So I would ask organizations, not just yours, but organizations to think about going out into schools, going out into the areas that need that support, need that voice, and start to talk about what you do as a company and what careers look like, so that it falls into people's consciousness. You'll be amazed how many people I've had conversations with from different backgrounds who have just thought that it's not something they would be able to do, and it's only because it's just not been part of their education as they were growing up. So I would highly recommend that organizations start to think about talking to 14, 15, 16-year-olds about what future careers look like, so that as and when these people of all different backgrounds come out into the marketplace, they are fully informed about what career options are available for them. I mean, it's a massive topic. I could literally get a coffee now, Lynn, and just carry on talking to you about it. But it's not about thinking about just about the here and now. It's thinking about what can we be doing that will see a huge change. Coming back to Karen's comment, a huge change in a year, 2 years' time that we are investing in now for the future. Thank you for jumping on the mic.
Thanks, Lynn. We've probably got time for a couple more questions, maybe a bit more, depending on the answers. Here's one on the FLAME framework for you, Sam. So the person found it really useful. How can we make I&D even more important in a virtual world, and also some tips to support the buy-in of others?
First thing I would always say, it's the L, it's listen. I would ask first what people want. I've worked with a number of, particularly my one-to-one business actually, a number of people who've had really great ideas and really great initiatives, and I've put them in, and they cannot understand why people aren't jumping out of their seats with joy that they've been brought in. People, just like you're trying to improve inclusion and a sense of inclusion, include people at the beginning. So I would walk through a framework, and you can change it, it is mine, but it's got to work for you. So use them as pointers. But what else does inclusion mean to you? Think about the stories that you've shared or you've heard. And I would create a discussion about what that means to the people that you're working with within your teams. And I would put together almost, how do we want this to work in the future? So I know that a lot of people are trying to build hybrid teams, remote teams, and still having them feel connected, and are trying to put these like really wacky and crazy and really exciting initiatives together. But unless people feel that it's like another task to do, you know, oh, I've got my social this week, you know, that's not what you're trying to achieve. So I would always go with asking and creating discussion to start with, creating agreement and buy-in. How are you going to keep yourself accountable to it? How are we going to call each other out? Set up with a psychologically safe environment. That is how to bring in that change for me. Did that answer it, Robin? You just heard about what I said. Just go back to the original question.
Original question. How can we make I&D even more important to a virtual world, and tips to support the buy-in of others? And the person did just come back to us and says, yes, they did answer questions. So thank you. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for letting us know.
Yeah, we've got time for one more, I think, before we pull to a close.
I think that's correct, Sam. So let's go with this one from anonymous attendee here. Being an inclusive employer is a huge focus for our business, and training our employees and managers to be more inclusive leaders is already in progress. Fantastic. But how do we bring customers along with the journey to be seen as leading the way as a more inclusive brand for customers, not just employees?
Share your story. Share your story with your customers. Let them know. I don't know how you communicate with your customers. I don't know whether this is, you know, customer facing or your supply chain. I'm not sure what kind of business you have, but if you whatever way that you communicate to your customers, communicate the kind of language that's come out of this. What are your people saying? And then ask the same questions you've been asking to your people, to your customers, and start to engage in some dialogue. It's, you know, I found that really quite inspiring. I've worked a long time with encouraging employers to drink their own lemonade. So they heavily focus on their customer experience, and they're really confident about that, and they know, you know, what their customers are looking for and what excites them. And then I ask about their employees, and do their employees feel the same sense of emotions and motivation that they've created in their customers? And sometimes there's a massive disconnect. And so how do they bring that into their own organization so that their customer, you know, their employers become their internal customers? They can't wait to walk through the door in the morning virtually or whatever. They feel motivated to come back again and again and again. They talk really positively about the brand to their friends and family, etc. What you've done is the other way around. So you've created this really great internal story and dialogue. I would start to share what's coming out of that with your customers, and then ask some questions out to your customers to create the dialogue back, and then you will feel more informed. Again, with any of this, I would always start with share, ask, listen, and then decide what your customers are telling you, what you want to do with that.